All right, we're going to continue with our entity relationship diagramming. We've already gone over. First step, entity sets. That includes figuring out their attributes and primary keys. Next, what are the relationship sets that connect together those entity sets? Then we're going to figure out the cardinalities. We're going to do mapping cardinalities for our relationships. Now we have another layer to this, our fourth step, which is determine whether or not entity set's participation in a relationship set is total or partial. All right, what does this mean? So when we have total participation of an entity set A in a relationship means that every row in A must be matched with at least one row in B. If we don't have total participation, then we have partial participation. So total participation is basically saying we're never going to have one of these things whereas I as a row, I as an entity in the set am not matched with something via that relationship. No, not for me. I'm always going to have at least one other thing via that relationship that I am matched with, one other row in the other table that I am actually matched with via that relationship. All right. How do we show this in our diagrams? All right. So total participation is shown with double lines connecting the entity with the relationship. So it's the lines between the entity and the relationship that talk about the entity's participation in that relationship. All right. So example, always the best way to proceed. Let's say we changed what we had just before, that we require all students to have an advisor. So if you're a student, you can't just be a student in the database. You must have an advisor assigned to you at all times. It's a requirement. Students must totally participate in this relationship. All right, so we've got instructors. And again, I should show you that, we've got some other stuff here for the instructors, their attributes. We have students. They have attributes as well. We have our advisor relationship here in the center. We've drawn this line between them. We figured out the cardinality, which is one student maps to one instructor as an advisor. One instructor maps via advisor to many students. So we've got our cardinalities. Now, so those are our first three steps. Fourth step, do we have total or partial participation of an entity in the relationship? So we're going to have the requirement that all students have an advisor. So students, every single student in here, every row of the student's entity set must be involved in this relationship. So I will always be matched with at least one. Oh, and because it's this, I'll be matched with at most one. So every student will have one advisor who is an instructor. And so we make this a double line. All right, so this is where we did the whole every student has one advisor. Okay, it's this part. This is really every student has, we really should add in, that means at least one. The arrow over here means at most one. So we'll know that I'm totally participating in this relationship. So every row has a relationship, and we know that that relationship is one student to one instructor. All right. Now, what about the instructors? Well, let's say we leave the diagram as it is. So this stays a single line. So when this is a single line, what this means, an instructor has partial participation. And I suppose what I should really have said was this is total participation over here. 2 lines means total participation, which is translated as follows. But partial participation basically means that, look, as an instructor, because I have partial, I might not be related via the relationship advisor to any students. So absolutely, we got some instructor. That instructor has no advising duties. They're not required to advise any students. And so that instructor is not matched with any rows over in the student's entity set. So single line is partial participation in the relationship between the entity and the relationship. Double line means the entity's participation in the relationship is total. Every row in this entity set must participate in this relationship. So we have to have at least one match over here. All right. Now, I want to note something. We've got that for our total and partial participation. All right. I want to note that the book also shows, or it talks about, using 0 ... star, things like 1 ... 1 labels on lines. Okay, so this is another way of denoting both, trying to discuss both the cardinalities and as well as total and partial participation. We will not use those in this class. If you use it, it will be marked wrong because we want to learn one notation in this class that allows all of us to communicate in this course and in the next one, as well as make the marking of TAs and the instructor reasonable so that we don't have to be processing lots of different notations. We're going to learn one notation. So we will not use this one. And if you do use it, we will mark it wrong. All right. So just a reminder again, we will use basically the whole notion of, are we making it an arrow or not? And are we making double and single lines? So we're going to control doing our cardinality with, do we make it with an arrow? And then we're going to talk about our participation with double or single lines. Again, double line is total and partial is single line. All right, we've got these 4 steps now. Entities, their attributes and primary keys, relationship sets, mapping cardinalities. Do we have total or participation of an entity in the relationship? We're largely on our way to basically having entity relationship diagramming done. I'm not sure there is actually anything else. There might be some issues about defining what those primary keys are, but I think we've already covered that. I think that might be it. I'll double check, and if there's anything more to tell you about entity relationship diagramming, it will be the next video. All right.